When the NBA draft goes down, every single selection comes with its own bit of hype and excitement because in that moment, literally anything can happen in the future of the young players' careers. After a few seasons of watching these guys play real NBA basketball though, we start to get a much better idea of what they actually are as prospects and players. Hindsight is of course always 20/20 in these situations, but if we were to go back and give the teams at the top of the draft a chance at a do-over, I'm sure some of the teams would stick with the players they originally chose, but quite a few others would pounce at the opportunity, and that's what we're here to do in this video. We'll be going back through the top 10 selections from the 2021 NBA draft, and we'll be redrafting based on what we know now about these players and teams 2 years later. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting things off with the number 1 pick in the draft, the Detroit Pistons still select Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is who was originally taken here at number 1 back in 2021, and while there are a ton of highly productive players from this draft class, I still believe in Cade above the rest of the pack. Cade had a very solid rookie season across the board, and last year in year 2, he was looking like a prime breakout candidate, but after just 12 games he suffered a shin injury that needed surgery and held him out of the rest of the season, so it set him back a bit. Before that happened though, Cunningham was averaging about 20 points, 6 rebounds and 6 assists per game. He was really looking like he was in good command of the offense, and while his overall shooting splits still leave a bit to be desired, it's way too small of a sample size to overreact to. Cunningham is now back healthy, he's been dominant in the Team USA scrimmages before the FIBA World Cup this summer, and this year I'm expecting big things from him. Next up, with the second pick in the draft, the Houston Rockets select Evan Mobley. The Rockets originally chose Jalen Green here, but in hindsight, Mobley is probably what they really needed. The Rockets have been horrific defensively each of the last 2 years, ranking dead last on defense in 2022 and second to last this past season. Perhaps adding Mobley, who through 2 seasons has already been named to the all-defense team, anchors one of the best defenses in the league, is incredibly versatile on that end, and could realistically one day win the Defensive Player of the Year award, would have changed that. You also have to keep in mind that this is the draft that the Rockets landed Alperen Sengun later on, but because this is a redraft, spoiler alert, Sengun gets selected later in this video, so in this hypothetical, they are still also in need of a center. Mobley, I believe, contributes more to winning basketball, impacting the game at a high level. Up next, with the third pick in the redraft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Franz Wagner. The Cavaliers originally drafted Evan Mobley here, but because he is no longer available, they would then pivot to the player I believe both doesn't get enough credit for how good he has been early on, and fits perfectly into the small forward position that the Cavaliers have been desperately trying to fill for the past few seasons. Franz Wagner already looks like an incredibly well-rounded wing player who can play a variety of different roles, and I honestly don't think it's a hot take to say that he could be an all-star one day. He was an efficient 19-point scorer last season, knocking down threes, creating his own offense off the dribble, and finishing well at the basket, but then he also plays with a ton of poise and tends to make the smart decision with the ball in his hands as a playmaker. If the Cavaliers continued down the path that they did, but with Franz in the lineup, then they would have even more firepower alongside Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, and Jarrett Allen would still be holding things down inside defensively. Next up, with the fourth pick, the Toronto Raptors select Josh Giddey. The Raptors originally selected Scottie Barnes here, but through 2 seasons, Giddey just continues to get better and better, and he checks so many boxes in such a short amount of time. 2 years ago, the Raptors were still planning to compete for playoff appearances and titles, but now 2 years later, they're coming off of a season where they missed the playoffs entirely with a roster that severely lacked playmaking. The Raptors relied way too heavily on Fred VanVleet in the the backcourt, and their depth at the guard spots was also pretty lacking. So if they were to perhaps have Giddey to take some of the ball handling duties, I think things would have still been running pretty smoothly for them. Giddey is the kind of player who pretty much always takes what is given to him without trying to do too much. If there's a driving lane, he'll take it. If the defense collapses on him, he'll kick it out to the open shooter or dump it off to the open big man at the rim. He's got a big, strong body and plays good defense. If his three-point shot ever becomes even above average, he's also easily an all-star in the making. Up next, with the 5th pick, the Orlando Magic select Jalen Green. The Magic originally selected Jalen Suggs at this spot, so in this scenario, the Magic would be through the moon to be able to replace him with someone like Jalen Green. Looking back, the Suggs pick never really made much sense because the logjam they have at the point guard position, while struggling to find consistent production from the shooting guard spot, so Green is not only a better player, but also a much better fit for them. In this draft class, Green is probably the best pure scoring talent in the whole class, coming off of a season where he put up 22 points per game, but the reason why he slid a tiny bit down the draft board in this is because he has a lot of bad habits that he needs to shake to ever contribute to winning basketball. When Green gets going, there's not much that can stop him, but there are also times where his shot selection can be pretty bad, he can be a bit of a ball stopper on offense, not looking to pass the ball, and his defense leaves a lot to be desired. Next, with the 6th pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Scottie Barnes. The Thunder originally drafted Josh Giddey here, but he's already off the board, and looking at the remaining available talent, Barnes would probably fit perfectly into the Thunder culture. No young team competes harder than the Thunder right now on both ends of the floor, and Barnes is an incredibly intriguing defensive talent with a versatile offensive skill set. Barnes also has a 7-foot 2-inch wingspan, and if you look at the guys that the Thunder have been drafting over the last few years, you'll know that's right up their alley, because they love players who are long and versatile. Barnes actually won the Rookie of the Year award in 2022, but he didn't really improve much, if at all, in his second season. He has a long way to go as an overall shooter of the basketball, but with his defensive intensity, his court vision and passing talent as a forward, and his savviness in transition, he'd be a great fit for the Thunder with a group that loves to push the pace. Next, with the 7th pick, the Golden State Warriors select Alperen Sengun. The Warriors originally drafted Jonathan Kuminga here, but with the way that Sengun is developing, I'm very intrigued with the idea of him being in the center of this Warriors system. As we know, the Warriors run a fast-paced motion offense filled with cutting, screen setting, and playmaking coming from the big men setting up their shooters. Sengun has been compared to Nikola Jokic for a variety of reasons, and while he obviously has a long way to go to come even close to the 2-time MVP's production, the style of play is definitely similar. Sengun is a super crafty center with outstanding court vision and passing talent, and some of the passes he makes to his teammates wow you on the level that Jokic's passes do. That would work wonders setting up guys like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and in this redraft scenario, they'd take that all day. Next, with the 8th pick, the Orlando Magic select Trey Murphy. The Magic originally landed Franz Wagner here, so since he's gone, and with them having taken a guard early on in the video, now they can land a solid wing player as well to take home a pretty strong haul in this redraft. Murphy eased into things as a rookie, but last year in his second season, he took a huge leap forward, showing he can be an outstanding 3-and-D guy in a lineup. With his 7-foot 1-inch wingspan, Murphy pesters opposing ball handlers and can guard multiple different positions, and then offensively, he knocks down about 41% of his threes, while scoring about 15 points per game. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to impact the game, and alongside what Orlando already has, that is more than ideal. Up next, with the 9th pick, the Sacramento Kings select Austin Reaves. Sacramento originally drafted Davion Mitchell here, but if they had the chance to go back, they would love to draft a guard who not only competes on defense, but has shown that he can play virtually any role you need him to play, as Reaves has done in his time in Los Angeles. Reaves originally went completely undrafted in 2021 as well, so he is the biggest riser in today's video. Through 2 seasons, Reaves has operated rated as an off-ball spot-up shooter, a primary ball handler, a shot creator, a facilitator, whatever you can think of, the Lakers have probably had him do it, and he's done pretty much all of those roles well. This past season, he put up about 13 points per game, but he's so efficient scoring the ball, shooting 53% from the field and 40% from three, and he's comfortable getting to his spots and converting from all three levels. And finally, with the 10th pick in the draft, the Memphis Grizzlies select Herb Jones. The Grizzlies originally drafted Ziaire Williams here, who is still 2 years later an incredibly raw wing prospect, but Herb Jones is actually looking like what the Grizzlies probably hoped that Williams could be. Herb Jones, in my opinion, was the biggest snub from this season's all-defensive teams because he is truly elite on that end of the floor already. He was top 10 in steals, he's amongst the league leaders in deflections, he's one of the best wing players when it comes to maneuvering through screens and staying on his man, and he just makes life hell for whoever he is guarding. The Grizzlies were already a top 3 defense last season, but they legitimately could have been even better with Herb Jones in their lineup. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you would want your team to take in a redraft. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.